Hey all, good to see you today. I've been listening recently to a teaching series that really intrigued me. It was about decision making. The premise of the teaching is that the direction of our lives are determined by the decisions that we make. In other words, where we end up, the place we are today, and where we're going in the future is all dependent on the decisions that we've made in the past or the decision we're making today. Most of us would agree with that. But there's a couple of truths about it that I thought were significant as I thought this through. And one is this, is that there's two truths about decisions in general. One is that every decision we make has a consequence. Now, we know this, but we often forget it in the moment. But it's logical. If we decide to spend our money over here, then we can't spend it over here. If we decide that we're going to put our energy and time in this one area, we can't spend that time in another area. There's a consequence to it. If we decide that we're going to live on French fries and donuts, there is a consequence to that for our weight and for our health. If I decide that I'm going to spend 65 hours a week at work, there's a consequence to that relationship. Every decision has consequence. Now, it works in the other way as well. If I decide to exercise 3 times a week, there's a positive consequence. If I decide to eat right, there's a positive consequence. It's actually one of the universal laws of our universe is that every decision has one. In fact, Paul talked about this. In Galatians, he said, God can be not mocked, but what a man or a person reaps, sows, they reap, which is basically the law of consequences. You can't get away from it. Now, the problem in our society is that we want consequence-free decisions. Most people would like to do what they want, when they want, without any consequences. And that's why we're always looking for the next pill, the next shot, the next thing that can blame or that we can get rid of our problems right away. It's why we borrow money. It's why we go into debt, all these things. So that's the first truth. Every decision has a consequence. And the second truth is human beings as a whole, not very good at decisions. When we get into the moment, we often make bad decisions. In fact, entire industries, sales industries, are based on this. One of the worst decisions my wife and I ever made was to timeshare way back when we were early in our marriage. And we showed up and there was a lot of pressure and they made everything sound really good. And so we ended up spending money and buying a timeshare that we ended up having to get out of later because it was a bad deal. The decision in the moment was a bad one. And why? Because we waited for the moment to make it. And you know this. Because when you're hungry and you sit in front of the fridge and you open the door and try and make a decision on what to eat, you're probably not making a good one. And when you are on the car lot, you just know that you need a car, but you haven't thought about it ahead of time, the odds of making a good decision aren't all that high. And that's why this idea of pre-deciding, I think, is really intriguing. Pre-deciding is essentially decision making, but you're doing it ahead of time. You're saying, in light of what I know about myself and the situations I'm going to face, what am I going to do when that occurs? And so that can happen in all kinds of areas. It might be in relation to food where you pre-decide this is what I'm ordering when I go to restaurants, or this is what I'm going to keep in the house, or this is how I'm going to respond when I have a craving. It could be in relation to work, pre-deciding how much you're going to do. So when the boss pushes in or when the situation seems like you have to work more, you've already decided what you're going to do because you know what's important. It can work personally. I know that when I'm triggered to get angry, I'm going to pre-decide that this is how I'm going to respond. I'm going to wait or I'm not going to react on it. Maybe it's that temptation that comes calling. Maybe it's with the desire to spend money or buy something. Pre-deciding is simply the ability to think ahead of time when we're not in the heat of the moment about the most appropriate decision to make. So my encouragement to you this week is pick 1 or 2 things that are really important to you. Things that are about the direction of your life that you want to have in control, and pre-decide how you're going to respond the next time something comes up that might derail the direction of your life. Because in the end, the direction of our lives, the results of our lives, is simply the accumulation of the results of our decisions. Let's make those decisions good ones. Till next week.